Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the first Iam4Re webinar today. We've got a very exciting and interesting and packed agenda for you all. My name's Nick Ferguson, and I'm a senior manager and shareholder at Trust IT Services, and we're one of the partners in the Iam4Re project, and we're involved in a lot of activities around standardisation, which is one of the main topics of the Iam4Re project. So today's webinar will be looking at different areas of knowledge valorisation. Knowledge valorisation focusing on intellectual asset management of research results, and also how you can use standardisation to valorise your project results. We've got, as I said, a full agenda, and we'll be starting off in a moment from a landscape view from the European Commission to set the scene on the importance of knowledge valorisation in respect to the research world. And then we'll be moving on to Andrea Anselmo, who is our coordinator from Metagroup. And Metagroup are an important organisation in this field because, of course, they lead the booster service, which is provided by the European Commission. And many of the partners within our consortium are also involved in the booster, both for dissemination, exploitation, intellectual asset management, and standardisation. So this project really brings together different elements of knowledge valorisation. We'll then hear about the gaps and requirements in intellectual asset management for valorisation. And we'll be hearing from Hannah Kosover from ASTP. And we have an exciting panel there, pulling together different people from different stakeholder organisations and looking at some of the first results from our project in analysing the needs around this topic. And then we'll have a second panel led by Claire Fritz from Juris. And again, he will be looking, though, at best practices in the field. So what's happening, some examples, and lessons learned in this area. So we've got a lot of people. I think people are probably joining as I speak. We have 90 registrants, which is really, really, really pleasing. Especially for a first webinar for a project like this. And you can see that we have, I think it's 12 different countries represented from across Europe, and different types of organisations too on board, including policymakers, SMEs. And where it says technology, it actually means technology transfer officers, which is one of our key stakeholders in terms of facilitating and enabling these offices and the people who work there to understand better how intellectual asset management and standardisation can really increase valorisation of projects across research organisations. And you'll also see that we have a higher percentage of females participating in not only in the agenda, but also in the webinar itself, which is really pleasing as well. So I'll just give you a couple of housekeeping recommendations. So we really would like to have your questions today. You can ask your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom. And either the speaker, if you say who it's for, that would be helpful, and the speaker can maybe respond after their presentation, or one of the panelists will write an answer in the box as well. So we'll try and address all questions, and we would like questions from the audience. Everything's being recorded, so we're going to be publishing this on the website afterwards, and all of the presentations will also be available for you. The presentations will be up today. The recording will take a little bit longer, but it'll be up this week. If you're having problems with audio, switch on, switch off. I think everybody knows how this works. So with that, I'd like to hand over to our first speaker, which is Anna Battiston from the European Commission, from RTD. And I will stop sharing my slides and hand over to you, Anna.
Yes, thank you very much, Nick, for the handover, and thanks to Andrea and to all the Iam4Re team for inviting me today. It's a pleasure to be here on behalf of the European Commission. Before I start, as you said, setting the scene, giving you a flavor of what we are doing right now on valorization, what the current priorities are. Just a few words about myself. I'm Anna Battistone. I'm policy officer at DG RTD of the European Commission. And in particular, I work in the knowledge valorization and technology infrastructures unit. We have actually inherited the tech infra file recently this summer. And I was previously working always at the Commission, but at the Joint Research Center in the Competence Center for Tech Transfer. So I tried to create a presentation today that not only highlights current policy priorities, but also sets a bit the Iam4Re project against this backdrop and against our efforts on knowledge valorization since a few years now. Our unit has been active for a few years on promoting valorization, developing valorization policies to update what was guidance, Commission guidance, mostly focusing on IP, more traditional IP management dating back to 2008. And I would say since 2022, it's the Council recommendation on the guiding principles for knowledge valorization, which has been leading the way on improving how research results are transformed, translated into marketable services, products, but also in outputs that bring value not only in economic terms, but also for society through a series of valorization channels. And as Nick mentioned, standardization is one of these. The Commission has implemented these higher level recommendations in the form of four codes of practice. Here you can see two that are more related to the Iam4Re project, so on intellectual assets management, on standardization. We also have two codes on citizen engagement and on industry-academia co-creation. The idea here is to give guidance to R&I stakeholders that is a bit more operational, so that they can be supported in valorizing their research results throughout these different channels. And Iam4Re, I want to say this already, for us is a key piece of the puzzle to operationalize these codes. And also I know that it will be very valuable in the coming month, in the coming year, in terms of supporting and complementing rollout of other actions that we are planning that I will share with you in a bit, and to provide policy input, policy relevant input, both through deliverables that the project has, maybe you will hear some findings later, but also in this feedback to policy mechanism. So we really greatly value this CSA, this initiative. Since then, valorization has been a cornerstone of multiple strategic policy documents. First of all, in 2024, member states sort of validated again the importance of valorization in the Council conclusions and stressed the need for member states and Commission alike to take this further, to adopt more initiatives to push valorization efforts even more. And the past year, 2025, we had multiple high-level reports like the Professor Drager's report, but also the Competitiveness Compass, Startup Scale-up Strategy, which really had a key focus on valorization and commercialization of IP. The Competitiveness Compass, of course, we know highlights the innovation gap as one of the key challenges that the EU is facing. And translating research results, improving how this happens, how fast this can happen is key for EU competitiveness. On this basis, the startup and scale-up strategy adopted in May has put together a very ambitious set of actions to make sure that these innovative companies can set up in Europe, but can also choose Europe to scale up. So a set of actions that span across access to finance, access to infrastructures, but also to IP, to intellectual assets that are generated through publicly funded research. And here is where our unit in particular is most active. And finally, we have two big tickets coming up, two acts that are part of our Commissioner's Area portfolio. The European Innovation Act, expected to be adopted early Q1 2026, and then the European Research Area Act later this year. And I will say a few words on this as well later. But first, I wanted to focus on these activities, these actions that we have been tasked with from the Startup and Scale-up strategy. We are expected to deliver this set of actions by 2026. And in particular, as I said, the idea here is really to improve market uptake and rolling out the technologies that are generated through publicly funded research. We know that this is still a barrier for innovative companies, how they can access this IP. And so it's a key issue to tackle. In particular, in the Lab to Unicorn initiative, we have tasked to develop a blueprint. We could call it a framework, a EU framework for IP licensing as spin-off creation. Here, the idea is that, as many stakeholders actually highlighted in the consultation to the strategy, IP negotiations are quite complex, quite long. Tech transfer processes are not always clear also for inventors, what the rules are in the transfer of IP, some equity models in how universities participate in their spin-offs are not always investors friendly, and so on. So the idea is to tackle these challenges by providing some guidance that can be aligned across the EU, while at the same time being adaptable, flexible enough to take into account individual member states and organizational characteristics. Another action consists in the support of capacity building in tech transfer offices, and here is perhaps the most relevant for Iam4Re, since you are already active in this. And I will explain a bit how we envision all these initiatives to come together, and also to advance venture building in the universities and public research organization. And specifically on this action, what is the rationale? So we know this is not a new challenge, but it has been put quite high in the agenda and has been given visibility through, first, as I said, the report from Professor Draghi, but also we have a lot of data from EPO, even ASTP survey. They are here with us today. We know that TTOs are often understaffed, they lack financial resources, but also lack the expertise. And this impedes them to act effectively as intermediaries between researchers and industry, and to also support business development. Once again, stakeholders in the public consultation to the strategy highlighted the need to enhance the performance of these structures, to professionalize TTOs, and to support the sharing of best practices across the EU. So with this in mind, again, in the strategy, we are tasked to design this policy action supporting capacity building in TTOs. But of course, we want to do this in synergy with initiatives already on the ground. Here we have Iam4Re. We have another project that I mentioned here, always coordinated by Meta Group, actually. But we also have upcoming projects under the WIDERA calls for 2025. Now the submissions are closed, they are under evaluation. We expect projects for setting up a network of valorization intermediaries. This is very important for this exchange of best practices angle, but also to upgrade the services in knowledge and technology transfer for the professionals in knowledge and tech transfer in universities and public research organizations. And then we also have some actions related to capacity in valorization in the ERA Policy Agenda 25-27. I highlight them here. They are part of this structural policy for upscaling knowledge valorization capacities and activities. We have a total of 5 actions, and 2 of them you can see. The first one, building capacities of intermediaries, will focus mostly on strengthening links between academia, industry, public authorities, and will have as a focus, as a target audience, let's say, mostly professionals in tech transfer and valorization, whereas the second action in strengthening valorization capacities and skill of R&I actors will focus mostly on researchers, students, funding organizations, and so on. And then, as I said, 2 big tickets coming up. So we are not in the lead as a unit in this, but we are, of course, closely collaborating with the lead units. and contributing to the development. The European Innovation Act, on the one hand, will aim to create the best possible framework conditions for innovators, as I said before, to allow them to set up business here and to scale. One of the angles would be for sure to tackle the barriers for bringing these innovative ideas to the market, so commercialization-related barriers, and supporting access by innovative companies to research results. And then, on the other hand, the ERA Act will focus more on making, oopsie, I touched something, on making you a leader in knowledge-based growth, so a technological leadership, by realizing this fifth freedom, so free circulation of researcher, of knowledge, of talent. And we will tackle under the European Research Area Act some persistent challenges like fragmented legal frameworks, different levels of investment for R&D, and also, for instance, different recognition mechanisms. And I highlight here for the Innovation Act, the public consultation and the call for evidence are closed. But for the ERA Act, the public consultation is upcoming, so keep an eye out. You can follow the status here in the link when it will open. It's always very useful to get input from stakeholders. And then before I conclude, I wanted to draw your attention to some results actually from a survey that we conducted earlier this summer. We wanted to sort of get a bit of the pulse of how stakeholders in the R&I community perceived our codes of practice, our guidance, in terms of how much they were aware of it, how they were using it, how helpful they were finding this. And I will just share with you a few results to highlight again how important for us this Iam4Re project is. So first of all, it's a good indication that we managed to reach more than 300 respondents. Perhaps your own survey will be more successful in this and will be more granular. And I'm happy to hear the results. We managed to reach stakeholders from a variety of organizations of professional profiles, mostly, as it is expected, researchers and tech transfer officers. And the positive data is that 3/4 of them found these guidance documents useful and helpful for their own work, but also to raise the need for policy support for reforms at the appropriate government level. And quite remarkable that even though half of the respondents had never heard about the codes before taking the survey, the majority of them still, the vast majority still, considered them potentially helpful and were already planning to use them. And finally, another interesting data, perhaps not surprising, the code out of the four, the code that was least known is the one on standardization. And I mentioned this because, again, I think Iam4Re is really a key piece of the puzzle to bring these recommendations that you see are considered to be helpful and useful to the ground, to stakeholders, to enable them to implement them. So it really fills this gap in the meta level between commission guidance and then individual researchers, individual professionals, to be able to boost their performance and their knowledge and skills in valorization and standardization as one of the most challenging. And finally, I conclude here. Just wanted to remind, we have an upcoming event, our yearly flagship event on valorization on the 13th of November. And here you will have a chance to hear more about these policy initiatives, actually a bit more in detail. And I invite you to already have a look at the website. The agenda should be available soon to register. It's an event that is both in presence in Brussels, but also can be followed online. It will be web streams and actually also recorded. So I really invite you to have a look at the website and keep an eye open. So thank you very much. And if you have any questions, I'm here.
Thank you very much, Anna. That was really interesting, and interesting how you're trying to bring in all the different stakeholders and get them informed and involved. And I think in a moment we'll hear from Andrea on how the Iam4Re project will address that. And certainly what you're saying about standardization is something we found when we delivered the HS booster, the standardization booster to research projects. And generally the level of knowledge around standardization was could be a lot more, shall we say, to put a positive spin on it. So I don't see any questions in the chat, but if you do have a question for Anna, then please put it into the Q&A, not the chat, sorry, the Q&A, and then she can access it and we can go from there. So thank you, Anna. Thank you very much. I'll hand over now to Andrea, who is the coordinator of the Iam4Re project from Meta Group. So Andrea, hand over to you.
Hi, good morning. Good morning to everybody. Welcome to this webinar. Just give me a few seconds to share my presentation. Okay. Can you see it?
Yes, we can see it fine. Yeah, perfect.
Okay, good. I'm just sharing you some insight on the process of knowledge valorization and give you a brief, let's say, snapshot of Iam4Re. Anna already said many things about the relevance of this action. I will bring you more into the details of our operations and provide some input also for the next speakers, for the panelists. First of all, I would like to say a few things about knowledge valorization, why it is so important, and why there is a strong emphasis on impact. We invest a lot of resources, we as European citizens, and we are all looking forward the result of this investment in terms of benefits. And on the other side, the universities and the research and technology organization have an amazing amount of assets that could contribute to bring benefits into society and create a tangible impact. Just think about not just the knowledge available, not just the research results that could be shared, but also to the equipment they own, the infrastructure, the spaces they can make available to everybody. And this is also part of knowledge valorization efforts. And it all falls into the very famous third mission of universities, which is another important component of knowledge valorization, where, of course, intellectual asset management can play an important role. And it's also a matter of approach. We are used, when I say we, I mainly refer to my generation, the one who were born, let's say, in the last century, the boomers, the one who got a degree, a university degree during the last century. We are very much attached to a solution-driven approach. We do our research, we have our results, and then we assume that there is going to be a use and that there is going to be a challenge that we can solve. Now, the European Commission and also, let's say, other key stakeholders are using, getting another approach, which is problem and need oriented. There is a problem and need to address with our research and development project, and the urge to need that problem guides us in the development of research results. Research results that, thanks to specific action, that, for example, within a European project are called exploitation, dissemination, and within exploitation and dissemination, also the use of, let's say, standardization. Results that can generate a first outcome. And when you see here exploitation and dissemination, you may also imagine that there is written down third mission. The third mission is bringing research results thanks to activities and generate outcome which are the base for replication, wider market uptake, and scientific advancement. And thanks to this, impact can be created. Benefits for the society can take place. And of course, this is feeding again the circle and provide a mitigation to the problem, to the needs, our contribution to the challenges. And of course, everybody says, very nice to see, but we lack resources, we lack financial resources, we lack competencies. And every time that somebody says we lack financial resources, the real reality is different. It's not that financial resources are lacking, it's that what we are looking at, which is the mission, creating outcome out of research and development results. This is not a priority. It's not that the financial resources are lacked, it's that they are used for different priorities. So this is something very important to keep in mind, and this is something that with Iam4Re, we are also targeting with our activities and actions when we will do some, let's say, awareness raising within the decision-making level in university, research organization, just to raise awareness on the need to consider these as a priority. And of course, what is very important is that understanding that the knowledge is an asset. The knowledge is an asset that can be valorized during the duration of any project through knowledge valorization, through third mission, doing dissemination, exploitation, engaging with standardization issues. And then, thanks to this, in the medium term, after the end of the project, generate outcome, mobilizing adopters, and in the long term, reaching out beneficiaries and creating benefits and long-term impact on the society. And this is very, very important because knowledge valorization, intellectual asset management needs to be considered as part of this process where the entrepreneurial drive within the research teams plays an important role. Why? Because if nobody is going to use our intellectual assets, if nobody is going to use our research results, there is no way that an impact is going to be generated. Knowledge valorization plays a role only if the research team, the one involved in developing a solution, are willing to use it. Use could be several types, and we will learn later on the different ways to valorize intellectual assets, but this is not the key point. The key point is the willingness of the research team and the people around them to generate value which is not just revenues. Value could be also future benefits for the society, and this is very, very important. And this is the reason why this is called knowledge valorization and not just technology transfer, because it applies to all the knowledge domains, not just to the hard sciences, because it doesn't seek for revenues. look for value, look for final benefits. So with Iam4Re, we are supporting with our action academic institution, public research organization, spin-offs. We said how important is the entrepreneurial drive in order to make sure that the intellectual assets are properly used thanks to an efficient and effective management. We address the challenge of competencies, offering training programs, and tackle the, let's say, low level of awareness around standardization that may, let's say, I don't want to say stop, but slow down knowledge valorization processes. It's a big consortium of important key stakeholders, and it's going to last for a while and support all of you in the process. These are some inputs for the panel. I guess that will be stressed again. Standardization is a blind spot. Training is often offered in silos with little, let's say, push in highlighting the multidisciplinary need of knowledge valorization, where it's not just technology and IP protection that counts, but what counts the most is understanding if there is a use potential, a market grip, if there is a need to be addressed, a need which belongs to a very specific target group. It's an issue of making sure that competencies are well diffused, so training of trainers is extremely important, and it's an issue of making the most, Anne already said this, about what is already available in terms of EU-funded tools. There are several tools that could be, let's say, leveraged in the knowledge valorization process. And of course, it's a matter of raising awareness on knowledge valorization, which is, again, not just technology transfer, it's not just IP and IP rights, it's much, much more. We, in our company, have a policy. We forbid the use of the word technology. We forbid the use of the word innovation. We support the use of solution. We support the use of solutions that matches needs of specific target groups. We offer educational resources, we offer capacity building, we offer mentoring, we offer, as I was stressing, institutional empowerment, because we need to make everybody aware of what could be actual priorities. And of course, we offer contribution to policy alignment. Just to remind you where the key point of knowledge valorization is: no use, no impact. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Andrea. That was great. Really interesting points, which really, I think, set the scene and reinforce Anna's presentation, and really sets the scene very clearly in terms of this being a bit of a change in approaches and mindsets as well, and how important that is. So I'm going to hand over now to Hannah Kosova from ASTP, and one of our first outputs of the project has been to look at gaps and requirements for valorization. You've just heard some of the gaps which Andrea has mentioned there. So Hannah, I'll quickly hand over to you if you'd like to turn on your camera, and there you are. Okay, wonderful.
Thank you. So, greetings from Prague to everyone on behalf of ASTP. And as we've already heard, my task today is to introduce the results of our survey, which we did as part of the Iam4Re project. So give me a second and I will share my slides. So hopefully you see the title slide and
yeah, we can see.
Yeah,
perfect.
Thank you. For the introduction, I can say that this presentation will be a validation of what we've heard so far during the webinar today, both from Anna and Andrea, because as you will see, the outcomes of our landscape analysis or gaps and needs assessment or whatever you call it are still the same. That more needs to be done to promote knowledge valorization and standardization and try to blend these topics under one umbrella, not to keep them separate. So this is just a brief summary of our tasks within the Iam4Re project to assess the awareness and practices in both the topics, knowledge valorization and standardization, focus on intellectual assets management. Thank you, Andrea, for presenting how we understand this, that it's much broader approach than just the traditional technology transfer and intellectual property rights. It goes far beyond this understanding and try to identify the gaps in capacities, trainings, and how to align everything with what Anna Battiston spoke about, the EU codes of practice, and give it even more enhanced, I would say, practical touch. So we are trying to provide some input for further activities of this project, and I believe you will learn more in the due course. I won't repeat this. This is just the policy and legislation context of what we are talking about. I would like to point out maybe the last bit, which I believe Anna hasn't mentioned. And this is the synergies with the research management competence framework, which was adapted earlier this year, and also the existing knowledge and technology transfer or knowledge valorization, if you want to call it, with the new name, training and certification schemes, which is called RTTP, Recognized Technology Transfer Professional. So we may think about changing the name for something more in line with the knowledge valorization principles. But as you will see, there is some needs identified by the community are shifting a little bit towards the wider approach as well. Simply what we did, there was an online survey opened from May till July this year, so it overlapped a little bit with the European Commission survey, which Anna commented on. We got slightly less responses. We got 66 respondents from different institutions all across Europe, but also we had a couple of people from beyond the European Union. You can see that we had respondents from the United Kingdom, but also from Turkey, Switzerland, Serbia, and even Oman. But we had to check this, and it was really a relevant response from someone dealing at the practitioner level with knowledge and technology transfer as well. So it's interesting to see the different perspectives here as well. It was a mix of respondents from universities, public research organizations, but also a few spin-off founders or stakeholders in different roles. And I will jump straight to the results, not to take much longer. There was quite striking difference in between responses related to the knowledge valorization awareness and awareness on standardization. As expected in a way. I think since all the communication dissemination efforts by our colleagues at the European Commission and many other institutions, European project consortia, etc., I think knowledge valorization has been promoted more prominently compared to the standardization, which is still a relatively new topic to the community, and also maybe a bit more complex and difficult to understand in the new light of a possible tool, how to improve knowledge valorization and the uptake levels. So very few respondents mentioned that they've got standardization practices somehow embedded in their formal strategies, and they often narrow it down to the very technical, more like engineering sector approach, and not so well applicable to other disciplines. Therefore, the message from the community is that there is some training existing, mostly focusing on knowledge valorization and still being rather traditional, with topics like intellectual property, maybe entrepreneurship is becoming more prominent, asset identification, validation. But there is very limited training available for the topic of standardization, and I would say almost non-existent training for blending these topics under one roof, under one umbrella. It's quite interesting difference from what was mentioned by Anna, because from our survey results, there is still quite low awareness of the EU codes. And the message was they are useful, but we need something even more simple, more practical, more down to earth, what we could use, really like have some checklists, manuals, something what can be used by anyone within a university or an academic research institution or different entities as well. So we identified the demand for different types of learnings and trainings, and quite strong call for something practical guidance or manuals or checklists, which were mentioned in our survey results. And this is the last slide here. The key recommendations based on our landscape analysis or gaps and needs, what's needed actually to support intellectual assets management in the context of knowledge valorization, standardization, is to develop some module training, so something like a menu from which different institutions, different individuals can select what they actually need for their daily practice, and they can combine it as per individual needs, customize it. Then have some simplified guides for implementation of the codes of practice. And the third bullet point is probably the biggest one, somehow embed standardization topic as a part of intellectual assets management, not to see it as a silo activity. This would help to avoid the purely technical point of view, how to approach standardization. And hopefully Iam4Re project will find some answers and find some practical tools how to do this. And this is the last point, basically provide some toolkits which could support all of the above. So thank you very much. I will stop here to save some time for my colleagues. And in case there are any questions, just feel free to drop them in the chat, and I will stop sharing now.
Thank you very much, Hannah. That's really interesting. And yeah, as you say, that's the first one of the first results from our project. So I'd like to hand over to Laura MacDonald, who's going to be also from ASTP and who's going to be chairing the next panel. Laura, I'll hand over to you because, of course, you can introduce our panelists. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Nick. Thanks, Hannah. Thanks, everybody so far. So yes, I think we now start the much more interactive part of this morning's event. And so I'm very pleased to be moderating the next session. We have a very short half hour, but basically lifting exactly all the information, the wisdom that's been shared, both from the Commission, from Andrea in the context of this project, and the results that Hannah has just shared. And what I'd like to do very quickly is introduce the 4 panelists, and we're going to spend the next almost half hour together. And I think it's really important. We've, in a sense, heard the kind of top-down vision dream from the Commission down. But I think what we're going to do now is we're going to go a little bit behind the scenes and look at the perspectives of the different institutional players in this landscape, this challenging landscape of valorisation and intellectual asset management. So let me very quickly share my screen. I only have a couple of slides I want to share. Let me just do this if I'm sharing. Let me just get my screen here. Hopefully. Is this working? If people can, Nicholas, if you can just let me know if this is the screen with all the panelists on it.
We can't see it yet, I'm afraid.
Oh, right. Okay, that's not clever. Hold on 1 second. I'm not quite sure why my technology is not behaving itself. Let's just see. Let's go back. Well, I don't want to waste too much time. So what we might do instead is just go back to our panelists appearing themselves, opening their windows, and I'll just introduce them, because essentially we have 4 panelists. I see Alessandra Battigotti, you have put your camera on, thank you. So we have Alessandra Battigotti, so she's representing basically a knowledge valorisation professional. She's from the University of Bologna. She's also very active in the ASTP landscape, which makes her somebody, also in the Italian national landscape, somebody who's very much about sharing expertise, best practices, and understanding the how-to of this amazing kind of process and world that we find ourselves in. Also joined by Katiuszka Cruz, who is representing, good morning, Katiuszka, she's representing from Portugal, the Portuguese Innovation Agency. So much more at a policymaker, not just policymaker, but policy implementer part of the spectrum. So very critical player in the national and even regional landscape. So Katiuszka, look forward to your perspectives. And then we have another Hannah Tomaskova. So, you know, no pressure, but we are very used as ASTP, and I think Alessandra and the other Hannah would echo that we're very used to spending a lot of time as professionals sharing with each other. But we know for sure that everything that happens in an institution is very much directed, driven, mandated, empowered, facilitated by the management, the institutional management. So we're delighted, Hannah, that in your role as a vice rector responsible for knowledge valorisation, knowledge transfer, that you're on the panel this morning. And then we also have Ivana Mijatovic. So you are very welcome from Belgrade in Serbia. And I think I'd love to say you have 2 hats here, because you are a tried true academic. That is your professional career. That's what you do. But we have the bonus of having you present here, not just because you can speak from a traditional academic perspective, but also your expertise is actually in one of the very hot areas we're hearing about this morning. So all about understanding standards, the use of standards, the standardisation process, how that plays a role in our world, our economic world, the balance of industry and so on. So you're a very welcome member of this panel. So what we're going to do is we're going to spend the next few minutes. We have posed 2 key questions to each of our panelists. So we're going to have the first round, and I'm just going to invite them to share their individual perspectives representing the sectors they're here from, on understanding and sharing from their perspective what they see as the key gaps in intellectual asset management. So what I'd like to do first of all is invite Hannah. Oh, somebody shared my screen. Thank you so much. So you all have a picture to take away of the fabulous panelists in a very great position with their description. So thank you for sharing that. I think that's our friends at IT Trust. Thank you. So I think if we can take away the slide for now and focus on inviting Hannah Tomaskova. I think I'm going to put you in the hot seat first this morning. And, you know, just from your perspective, what do you think are or how would you describe the internal institutional challenges and gaps around the management of intellectual assets? Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you for the question. So, as I can say that at the University of Hradec Králové, one of our main internal challenges in managing intellectual asset is to raise awareness and their strategic value across the institution. We are a growing research university, but intellectual asset management is still often perceived as an administrative or legal issue rather than a part of our research culture. Operationally, we face the complexity of processes from IP protection and data management to the implementation of open science and the need to align these with institutional security principles. For example, when introducing data management plan in the research project, we realized how essential is it to connect open data policies with responsible data protection practices. Culturally, our focus is on building trust and shared responsibility so that researchers see managing intellectual asset as a natural part of their work and as a way to strengthen the credibility and long-term impact of the university.
Oh, that's really great. Wonderful. Super concise, and I'm absolutely sure it echoes with almost everybody who's attending this morning. So that's from an institutional perspective. I'd like to turn now to Katiuszka from the Innovation Agency ANI in Portugal, and really invite you to share what do you see are the challenges for intellectual asset management. And I invite you to consider not just your constituents from the research sectors and the universities, but also companies that are also very critical in the whole innovation landscape. And I apologize, Andrea, I'm using the word innovation, but I think we're allowed in the context of this panel. So Katiuszka, where do you see the challenges?
Absolutely. Thank you, Laura, and good morning to you all. Thank you for the opportunity to share some ideas and contribute to this debate. So from the perspective of an innovation agency that works closely between universities and companies, and mainly trying to connect these two different worlds, and working directly with the full spectrum of intermediaries that we have here, from inside the universities, the TTOs or KVOs, knowledge valorization offices, as you want to call them, and a lot of other stakeholders as incubators, science parks, and so on. We identified actually some gaps that I can try to share. The first is a strategic gap. So intellectual assets management is not seen as a strategy, neither like Anna was sharing for universities, neither for companies. So this is still seen as some administrative or legal task that needs to be done, and not actually as a strategy for competitiveness and impact. Then I would say we have an operational gap because we have fragmented systems and fragmented information inside the companies and also inside the other organizations as well. So we have different projects, different departments, and the information is dispersed and is difficult to manage and have an integrated system. And usually we don't have a professional dedicated to this management. And still I would touch in at least in Portugal, but I think this is cross countries, a cultural gap. Mainly the researcher, and Andrea was mentioning that, and I totally agree. The researcher still has a limited awareness about the importance of other types of assets, not only patents. So we have data, we have software, we have knowledge, we have know-how, we have expertise, we have a lot of knowledge that can really have an impact and have societal value. So I think we still have we have to tackle these gaps and work on this.
Wonderful. Thank you, Katiuszka. If I can turn now to Ivana and give you the floor to maybe address a very particular aspect where I think we've all heard and seen in the results that there's certainly a lack of awareness, and that is in your field of expertise. So my key questions to you are, it's a leading question, I think we know the answer, but please, I would love your elaboration on, with regard to standardization and the use of standards as part of the innovation process. Do you find that they are understood, well understood? Do you think they're effectively used? What do you think?
Certainly, we have already heard Andreas and Hannah's presentation, and they already told that we have evidence about that. There is a gap. Gap is evident. And standardization is not fully understood and effectively used in intellectual asset management. And of course, there are different challenges is that. First, the lot of standardization activities are not related to research, and the communities are standardization community, and infrastructure is functioning, but it is not the same in every country. Some countries have more developed national standards bodies, and they can support research and research organization and academic institutions. Others are lack with resources and experience in that. On the other side, I think the two things are very, very important to understand. First is the main challenges are the lack of use existing standard in research. And the second is the lack of participation in standards development, either development of new standards or contributing to existing one. First challenge is resulting in something that we can often name the standardization gap, in meaning that research excellence is not related to market acceptance. So standardization is a logical part in that. So we are connecting the worlds in standardization, and we have to be clear that good news are here, and now more than ever, I think there are initiatives who are developing or who are developed already material for training for different target groups in area of standardization. However, we have to be clear what Hannah says. It's very, very important that activities cannot stay in silos. And I think one of very good thing that Iam4Re is bringing, that is, I think, at my best knowledge, for the first time, connecting the worlds, practically knowledge transfer community, IP community, and standardization community together to solve and to just face need of research organization and academic institutions in knowledge valorization and tool which we are offering.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ivana. I think that's really highlighted for many people exactly where the key issues are. And so I'd like to close this first round with Alessandra Bacigotti from Bologna. Thank you for joining us. And so from your perspective, your question under the realm, identifying the gaps, is where do you see current institutional practices are, in a sense, still falling short of the dreams, the visions, and the standards, if I can use that word, set out in the European policies for knowledge valorization and utilization and the codes of practice? And maybe if you have a moment, I can give you a moment. If you see elements coming into play here with regard to artificial intelligence, and we feel that there are lots of fast things happening in our world that we could surely harness. But what do you think? Institutional implementation in that sense, where do you see the gaps?
Thank you, Laura. Thanks for having me here today. Happy to share my very experience as a practitioner in what I cannot call technology transfer, because otherwise we know we can't use this word today. Joking aside, so I would say that many, if not most, institutions still emphasize traditional technology transfer focused on the classical model, patenting, licensing, and neglecting a bit, I would say, the broader knowledge valorization goals, such as societal impact, stakeholder inclusiveness, and also the balance between managing on intellectual property and open environment, like open science, open innovation, as it is outlined in the guiding principles and in the codes of practice. I would say that this shift from technology transfer to knowledge valorization, from IP to intellectual asset management, on one hand, offers very good opportunities to create value out of research, with particular reference to the social science and humanities area, which has traditionally not been very much involved in technology transfer, knowledge transfer, because we know that only part of the IPR system applies to those areas. We cannot patent, typically we cannot patent research results from social science and humanities. However, for TTOs, for knowledge transfer offices, when we deal with intellectual assets, we sort of go out of our comfort zone. I'm not sure all of us are good at doing that, as we are actually missing the legal framework for the protection of those assets. And so what we do is we manage those assets via contracts on a case-by-case basis. And I would say we're still struggling to understand how to do it in the best possible way. And if I have just one more second, I would also like to touch on two more aspects. I think there are still both strategic and organizational implications, as on the performance of TTOs is still very much measured in quantitative terms. For example, revenues that come from research commercialization. And therefore, if we broaden the scope of what we do, if we value not only commercial outputs, but also other forms of impact like societal and environmental benefits, this creates some challenges with respect to the metrics that we apply. And finally, very last point for this round, organization. Should the TTO still be focused on making money by commercializing intellectual property? Shall we have other offices or functions in the university taking care of other types of impact, or should everything sit in the TTO? Which are the priorities then, considering the typical lack of resources, or, as Andrea was saying, different management of priorities that we have in the TTO? That's the kind of questions that I was asking myself while thinking about the topics for today.
Oh, wonderful. Thanks, Alessandra. And I think that's, not just very factually accurate, and I kind of resonate with what you said, but I do think it's also not just your unilateral thought-provoking questions about where responsibility could sit and how this can be structured. I think it's it's a very real question that I know everybody is keen to try and develop. And it may not be that one size fits all. We already know that there's such diversity, and effective diversity in approach in different institutions, depending on the scale, depending on the context, and depending on the relationships in the organizations, both within the institution, but also with the companies in the region or further afield. So there's no one size fits all model, but I think one of the things that we can do, and I think this project will also do, is just highlight a diversity of approaches and pull things together. So with the remaining time that we have in our panel, I think, thank you everybody for sharing, and I think very succinctly and ably the key challenges in the effective management landscape. I think I'd like to kind of flip that around a little bit, and in the second round I'll go in a different order asking questions. So Alessandra, you'll be first, not last, and maybe give you each the chance to answer a more dedicated question around thinking about, from your perspective, having said what the gaps are, if there's some things that you think are really critically needed to try and fill the gaps. And if you could maybe conclude your answer with the top one, the one key takeaway that's a need that fills the gap, then we can actually combine both a general perspective that you have, but also just our key takeaway from each of you on what is the top thing in your Christmas wish list for your landscape to fill the challenges. So Alessandra, let's come to you first. What do you think the best policy incentives might be to support institutions? If you want to take that one, but please feel free to.
Yeah.
give whatever answer you prefer.
I would go for incentives for academics to engage in knowledge valorization activities, because I think this is a main issue we have. Some institutions around Europe are starting to acknowledge academics' involvement in knowledge valorization at local level. For example, when it comes to allocation of university funding for research, they reward if academics have been involved in these activities. But generally speaking, we all know very well that academic career is still very much based on scientific publications. So researchers continue to be focused on education and research as their core missions and priorities, and knowledge valorization in many contexts is still, I would say, a nice to have and not a must have. This is my experience. So changing the career assessment system to reward knowledge valorization activities could create a real incentive and make sure that individual interests of academics are aligned with institutional missions. Because what we have now is that institutions are assessed for third mission activities, knowledge valorization, not the individual. So that creates a sort of misalignment. And I don't know, it's very difficult for me to choose the top one. I would go for a triangle, which is clear and stable policies and strategies for managing intellectual assets, combined with internal or possibly also external incentives, plus adjustment of the metrics. Sorry, I know it's 3, but it's super.
No, you've captured them on the triangle. We'll take that as your top one. No, thank you. That's really wonderful. Maybe if I can move across a little bit, Katushka, what do you think from your perspective? From an agency perspective, how do you see your role in supporting institutions develop solutions to the gaps that you've described?
Alessandra mentioned exactly my message and the key points that we have to tackle. Actually, the KPIs are always mentioned as a problem, as something that if we don't have the proper measures and if we are attached to quantitative KPIs, it's very difficult to raise to awareness to the societal impact that we cannot actually measure with a number, or it's very difficult to do so. But in the innovation agency's perspective, and as the role that we have as connectors, enablers of the ecosystem, and trying to connect and to promote the collaboration between stakeholders, I believe that the collaboration and the proper networks, and we have multiple models for networks. We should have networks for knowledge valorization professionals where they can share, and this project will have this part to share best practices and practical cases. I did like this, and it worked, or it didn't work. So this network environment with the same difficulties shared, but also networks of different stakeholders where each stakeholder shares their difficulties and their way to tackle them. It's very important, and I think is the role for innovation agencies to promote these networks, beside, of course, the funding and incentive schemes that we might manage. Try to introduce and design incentive schemes that really reward the projects that have intellectual assets management from the beginning, somehow in the research and innovation projects indeed. So this, to conclude, we need to have this strategic view on IAM. So we need to have this to look at intellectual assets management as a strategic priority, and consider it in our funding and incentive schemes, in our tools and frameworks that we design to help the organizations to use intellectual assets management strategies, and also promoting this collaboration and networking between different stakeholders.
Oh, fabulous. Thank you so much, Katuszka. And if I can move across now to Ivana, if you would like to explain what you think, how standardization in particular, you alluded to some of it very clearly in your first answer, but how can intellectual asset management implementation become more concrete and scalable as a key strategy adopted by everybody, if only we would use standards and the standardization infrastructure better? If you could highlight some of that for us, that would be great.
Yes, I would like to point a connection. Both Alexandra and Katuszka mentioned connecting the dots. And I would like to just say that standardization is collective activities. And there are a lot of interested parties that should be connected in idea that one solution, research results become something become codified into the standards and reach global users, global recognition, or global impact. But as I already said, that what is the message of many presenters of today, we need education, we need training, we need raising awareness, and we need connecting the dots of the different aspects and mutual understanding what is the role of standardization and other activities in knowledge valorization and intellectual asset management. But aside of all of that, today is World Standards Day. So I think that asset management can also, or intellectual asset managers can also share their expertise and start to work on something that is not a standard, but is a pre-standard document like SEN workshop agreement. And I think that is a very good way to present expertise, knowledge, experience, and best practices of intellectual asset management to be available for a lot of different actors in this area.
Great, thank you, Ivana. I think you've joined up some dots as well for everybody on this as well, which I think this is really fantastic. And Hannah, come back to you from the very start. And I think, what do you think, if you start with your own institution, do you see as the internal changes that might be needed, considering where we're starting, where you're starting, and where we all want to go? What do you think? We've got leadership, mindset, skills, funding. What do you think? Please. Floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. I will build a bit on what Alessandra, Katuszka, and Ivana said. The strengthening the management of intellectual assets requires on changing on several levels. At the leadership level, we need a stronger shared understanding that intellectual assets are not only the research result or patents, but strategic resources shaping the university's reputation and competitiveness. In terms of mindset, it's important to promote responsibility, openness, and collaboration, balancing between open science principles and institutional security. We have seen that creating cross-departmental working groups on data governance helped build this culture and shared understanding. Finally, we need to continue developing skills and research, data management, IP protection, and knowledge transfer. The goal, not only for me, is to create an environment where every academic understands the value of their work and knows how to handle it responsibly.
Wonderful. That's really very clear. Great wish list, Hannah. And I know that we are slightly behind time for our session this morning, so we will keep a close eye on questions that may be posed. If people want to put anything in the Q&A block, then we'll have a look at it and we will try and provide some answers. But without wishing to hold back the rest of the flow of the presentations, discussion points moving forward, I think, Nicholas, we might just address any questions that are posed, and people can follow up with us either during the remaining of the time of the session and certainly afterwards, so we can keep in contact. But I think just as a final closing from this panel session, I think what we've all heard, I think by this point in this morning on World Standards Day, as Ivana pointed out, and I have to say, having been involved, I think Andrea talks about the last century, and that just sounds like such a long time ago, and it was a long time ago. But I think what I find really particularly exciting, having been a person who's a knowledge transfer and knowledge valorization professional for many years, is that we are today in 2025 not just sitting around our screens with all the different essential players and representatives and stakeholders, but actually have already started joining the dots in a very effective way. So I think, you know, it really bodes well. And I think when I hear the answers to the questions that we discussed a little bit this morning, you know, there's not just, yes, we talk about a need for broader understanding and for greater mutual understanding. There's already so much collaborative cross-fertilization of understanding of the different roles that I think, Andrea, some of the vision that you've set out in your presentation this morning very clearly, you know, is kind of well on its way to being manifested. And although it does take time, and we can all be somewhat frustrated sometimes as to how long it takes for a little bit of change, I think what we're all benefiting from is this mass communication medium that we have, and this outreach and this incredible energy and momentum that everybody has to bring to the table. So, you know, academics can be categorized and researchers can be categorized as quiet in one corner, but actually they're just as front and center as the knowledge valorization professionals. And it's wonderful to hear people like Hannah and Katiushka today also embracing the opportunities and the responsibilities that are there. So I think the future looks bright, and we're looking for some really tangible results to inch things a little bit further forward in the results of this project. So I look forward to Claire and her next panel discussing on a more granular level some of the real outputs of this project. So Nicholas, I'll hand back to you, but with just a final thank you to the panelists this morning, Alessandra, Katiushka, Ivana, and Hannah. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Laura, and thank you to all the panelists. That was really, really important to get these perspectives from the different players within the community. So you talked about energy, and we have a very energetic person next who's chairing the next session, which is Claire Fritz, and she's joined by 4 movers and shakers in this field from the IP world and from the standardization world as well. So all covering intellectual asset management and how we can further this within research. So I'll hand over to you, Claire.
Thanks a lot, Nick, and thanks. I try not to be too energetic. Wait, let me just share my screen. Sometimes it's better to be not so quick. Are you all able to see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Yes, perfect. Yes. I wasn't expecting that, so that's a good thing. Hello, everyone. I'm Claire, and I'm here today chairing a wonderful panel of experts with immense expertise and experience when it comes to knowledge valorization, intellectual property management, and standardization. So let me just quickly introduce our panelists. So that's the panel all in all. We are going to discuss about lessons from the field, how institutions build capacity for knowledge valorization and standardization. And here I am really glad to start with Claire Dallier. Claire is the account manager for RTD collaboration and policy affairs at Sensenelec. I guess everyone knows Sensenelec. And Claire supports Horizon Europe projects in integrating standardization into research and innovation. But she's also helping to bridge the gap between science, policy, and standards. And then we have Knut with us today. And Knut is the head of innovation and regulation at Fraunhofer ISI. And he's also the professor of innovation economics at TU Berlin. And also, since a very long time, a leading expert in standardization and innovation policy. So he also played a key role, or plays a key role, in initiatives such as EU4 Standards. Perhaps you have heard of it. There was the Academy, I think 2 weeks ago in Vienna, if I'm not mistaken. And then he is active in the European and German standardization panels. And then we have also my dear even friend, I call him Dr. Eugene Sweeney. And Eugene is the founder of Iambic Innovation and has, if I may say this, over 40 years of experience in IP management and research commercialization. Eugene advises universities, research institutions, and policymakers across Europe, but he's also an evaluator for the Commission. He's an active member of ISO and SAN-SANELEC, and also did his work on developing, together with a bigger team, of course, but the standards for innovation management. And he is also an expert for the European IP help since a very long time. And then we have Christophe. Christophe heads the Knowledge and Technology Transfer Office at the University of Luxembourg and is also the former president of ASTP, so the team knows him. And he brings an extensive experience in building research industry partnerships and advancing professional training in knowledge valorization. So I hopefully introduced everyone correctly. If I did say anything wrong, please correct me. And last but not least, myself, I am here working in the team of intellectual asset management for research entrepreneurship, coordinating and leading the development of training content and tools. So let's start with the warm-up. We have, it's slightly differently organized. We have more questions, and the first 4 questions are asked to a specific person, and then we are answering all of us to all questions. So the first one to all of you is then, wait, I just don't see you all. I guess all cameras are switched on, right? Let me just check. Yeah, you are all there. Sorry, I just had to enlarge the window. So thank you very much for being here today. So the first question is, could you briefly share one example from your own experience where your institution or organization successfully built capacity in knowledge valorization or standardization? Who would like to start?
Well, I could, if you
yes,
hear
please.
me.
Yes, we do.
Yes. Okay. So hi to everybody. Thanks a lot, Claire, for the nice introduction. So I've got actually many examples, starting from France, where I created several TTOs and accelerating tech transfer company. But I will take the example of the University of Luxembourg, where I work now, because it's a brand new university. It's only a bit more than 20 years old. So this is a real young university. So the question of building capacity was a real question at the start of this university. And so what the university did, that was 5 years ago, it's a quite classical approach. They ordered an audit about knowledge transfer. Then they decided, based on this audit, to create a new central tech transfer service, a new TTO. And then they just found the money and recruited the people, including myself, which was a very good idea, I think. The interesting thing is that they got support from the ecosystem and from public money, because they used a national agency for research to get some funding to recruit the people to create this new tech transfer office. So this is a typical capacity building action, my point of view.
Great, thank you for sharing, Christophe. Would like to follow.
No one else will. And when I started in this knowledge, what we have to call knowledge valorization business, very long time ago, and also when I got involved in standards, that was about 15 years ago, I, of course, went on many training courses. But in my experience, you can only really successfully, if you like, build capacity and competence by turning your theoretical training into practice to make sure, often you do the training and the course material sits on your shelf. And what I found from my own experience, that what helped me most was being able to bounce ideas and ask questions from my colleagues, my more experienced colleagues.
you might call it mentoring. And Katushka mentioned this earlier about networking, being able to share challenges. And I think that's really what I found most useful in building my own competence and capacity, but also subsequently when doing trainings for institutions on whatever it may be. It's having some practical hands-on experience, which often comes after the training course. So many institutions and KTOs or KVOs or whatever we're going to call it now are fairly thinly spread, so they don't internally have the necessary expertise that a new player can use as a mentor. So I think organizations like ASTP or Licensing Executive Society or even this project maybe ought to look at ways of encouraging this sort of post-training sharing of problems, sharing of ideas, mentoring, if you like. A long time ago, I am a member of the British Computer Society, and they organized a scheme for mentors. So they had volunteers who would be prepared to work with new people in the field. So I think mentoring, doing it in practice, is probably one of the key things that I want to emphasize.
Thank you, Eugene. Yes, yeah, I agree. And Iam4Re is also going to offer mentoring services.
Yeah, good.
Claire, would you like to go on? You're smiling.
Yes, of course. No, I agree also with what Eugene said. Thanks for the question. So from the Sen and Senelec side, we really see capacity building and knowledge valorization and standardization as a long-term investment, so in people and networks. So what we do, one of our examples is a technical body officer training program. So it's really to strengthen the capacity of those who support and coordinate our technical committee. We have overall 500 technical committee covering a broad range of sectors for Sen and Senelec. So this ensures that our officers are well equipped to facilitate consensus building, manage complex standardization projects, and engage also with experts from diverse sectors and fields. So we help them building confidence, competence, but not only technical competence, I would like to say, because it's also reinforcing the culture of collaboration within our standardization community. So this is what we do on a regular basis and one of our flagship training. And another example I would like to mention that we started also to run over the last year with our members is their academic standard days. So these are events where we engage with universities, students, and researchers to show how standards contribute to innovation, sustainability, and everyday life. So it's been a great way actually to connect with young people and sustain our link with the academic community. So it's really for us staying close to our members, supporting individuals, and also nurturing our those national ecosystems.
Thank you. Sorry, this was my dog. I'm sorry. Knut, you are muted. Wait. Can I also unmute yourself? No worries, Knut. We can also just wait a second and go on with the next question to Christoph, and then we try to figure out how to unmute you. So, Christoph, the next question is for you. So, from a TTO perspective, obviously, what are the biggest institutional barriers you've encountered when embedding IAM or standardization in your daily practice? And I know your focus is more on IAM than on standardization, but still.
Yes, thanks for the question. Well, indeed, we focus more on valorization, although standardization is very necessary in certain topics. I will take maybe the example of the building industry or health, telecommunication, you name it. So that's interesting because when we talk about intellectual property protection, researchers, they mostly answer standardization because they know the market and the people work. But nevertheless, let's go back to the valorization issues linked to the IPO. So I would say that the main barrier would be maybe the discrepancy of between the communication, the political discourse, and the reality check. So that means that when we come to arbitration about money, resources, staff, when we talk about the three missions within the university, you can see knowledge valorization is really often the third one. And this is not a very positive analysis. So this is very difficult because we can tell and explain the PI, the researchers, that it is very important, but then we have to demonstrate, and that the political organization has to demonstrate it is important. And this is the kind of support we need from the hierarchy. So we need, the first type of support is effectively resources. So people, skills, resources, money, okay, organization, TTO, and so on. But the second type of support is a political one, and this is almost more important. So real empowerment, this is what we need. Of course, we face the issues with the motivation of the people involved, the creators, I would call them. And the first one is linked to the career. So a real incentive, a real motivation could come if these activities were really supported and transformed into real interest for the stakeholders, for the researchers. And that means also that the TTO is not only must not seen only as an administrative service. And that means that the TTO should be put at the strategic level. And this is not always the case. So the question is, with whom can you discuss? Are you entitled to talk with research lab directors, with faculties, deans, and what is your power to explain and convince, okay? So if you are not at the strategic level, then the message that the institution sends is that, okay, we have to have a TTO because it's a question of regulation, legal activities, compliance. But again, it's very administrative. And so it's more seen as an encumbrance than a real positive support for the researchers. And that's a problem. So, of course, entering in the processes of a tech transfer must be mandatory in a way, but we need also engagement and motivation from the researcher and from the management, the top management. Okay, so I would say just to conclude on this, one of the issues could be: are we fully aligned in terms of strategies from the people themselves, from the research labs, and from the institution? So if we don't have this alignment, this is really a barrier, be a very difficult barrier for us.
So the mandate, the power, and also the messaging throughout the institution.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. The next question would be for you, Eugene. So you've supported universities and research organizations all across Europe. And where do you still see the biggest gaps in training and support for IP and valorization?
Thanks, Bill. I think there are a number of gaps which still need to be addressed, and some of them are being addressed as we speak. And some of them have already been touched on by Katrushka and Andrea earlier. We mentioned there's been too much of a focus on technical results and commercial exploitation. Now, for a long time, as you know, I don't like the word exploitation. It has quite negative connotations. So I'm pleased now that we're thinking more about a broader valorization of all the research results, not just technical results, for societal, environmental, or policy impact. So that's the first thing. The other thing is maybe the training has been focused a bit too much on IP, intellectual property rights, the legalities of patenting, if you like, and other types of formal intellectual property rights, rather than looking at intangible assets in a broader sense, not just intellectual assets, but other intangible assets, including knowledge we've mentioned, but also people skills, which are very important when you're looking to provide services. And many universities tend not to go down the product route, but they'll tend to try and deliver a service. And a service depends on people, and some people have particular skills. Great designer, great programmer, so great footballer. You know, these are intangible skills which are important, or brand value, for example, the perception that people have. So there's a, you know, we're broadening out, need to broaden our view of what these intangible and intellectual assets are, the value of them, and also the different ways of protecting them. So not just IP rights, but also trade secrets, for which there is a formal legal framework in Europe, or contractually. It just depends on what the asset is. So I'm quite pleased to see the Commission now moving to knowledge, valorisation and intellectual assets, rather than talking about exploitation, IP, commercialization, and so on. So it's not just taking this broader view of what these assets are and ways to protect them, but as has already been mentioned, it's actually using them strategically. We need to think about protection of assets and even the use of standards as strategic tools that may or may not support valorization. If we're talking about intellectual assets management and standardization, both of those I see as tools that can support valorization or company growth or commercial or non-commercial. So we need to think about it strategically and learn how to assess whether or not it might help. Because it may be that when you look at it, no protection might be the best strategic option to make things open and to make, valorize through added value products and services. So that's more of a perception. Some of it's already been mentioned. But there's also a gap, I think, concerning the role of standards in valorization. We're just beginning to think about it now. We've had the Horizon Standards Booster trying to get standards more involved with projects. And the recently published Code of Practice for Standardization notes that we need to make KTOs fit for standardization, whatever that might be. So again, this is an aspect that needs to be considered, but it's this link between standards and valorization which is missing, or rather the strategic use of standards to support valorization. And it starts at the research stage. I've been involved, my background is ICT, where standards have always been important just to ensure interoperability and compatibility from the hardware right through to the application. But it's important at the early stages that if someone is developing a research result, that is going to conform to a standard, because if it doesn't, they'll be out of sync with what the market wants, and that will therefore affect the likelihood of valorization. So bringing people together, I think someone's mentioned it, the importance of researchers being aware of what's going on, maybe bringing together the research support group with the tech transfer offices so that the valorization input is there at the early stages. So the question can be asked, you're doing something technical, have you checked, that you're going to comply with existing or developing standards? So there's the technical standards involvement there. But I'll say there are other ways in which standards can support valorization. It's not all about compatibility and interoperability. There are other standards, such as safety standards, which could be important to give comfort to a potential licensee, which can support the valorization. And there's also management system standards. You mentioned earlier the Innovation Management System Standard, ISO 56000 series, which includes IP management, managing innovation partnerships, managing innovation portfolios, and so on. All of these are essentially international best practice or developed from a large number of international experts. ISO 56000 can also, now you can be certified like ISO 9000, so you can get a little tick box to show that you're doing your innovation management to an internationally recognized standard. So standards can support not just the research interoperability of it, but can support the management of the KTO, and also be something to leverage your to give comfort to your potential licensee. So those are the sort of gaps that I see, or the directions that I think we could be moving in.
Thank you. So I take away that you say kind of, assessing the value already at the very beginning is one of the gaps, or how to do this, and then also the management standards themselves.
And for KTOs to you need to be involved in any decisions being made by the researcher about standardization. And this is a different issue. Encouraging the researcher to go off and offer his research outputs to a standardization committee for consideration as a standard is a strategic decision. It's something that could affect the subsequent valorization. So that's something that the KTO needs to be involved in before the rabbit is let out of the hatch and they can't do anything about it. So
that again also leads back to what Christoph just said before about when to be involved, at what level to be involved. The
SEN workshop agreement again is another example. If there's going to be a workshop.
Before we also have to go on, have to give the floor to Claire now, because we've been talking now about institutional practices and gaps, and now I would like to deepen the dimension of standardization by asking Claire. So standardization is often described as a blind spot in training and institutional strategies, and what can we do to make it more visible and relevant to researchers and TTOs? So could you perhaps just share some examples how you try to do this?
Thank you, Claire, and I believe it's a good transition with what Eugène was just saying, so more complementarity and integration of all intellectual asset management tools. I agree, actually, that's a great question. So standardization has often been a bit of a blind spot in training and institutional strategies. But I would like to say the good news is that it's starting to change. There is a standardization strategy that was released in 2022 by the European Commission, and the creation of the high-level forum on the European standardization. There was a work stream on education. So the valorisation policy also from the GRTD and all the code of practice. So we are seeing real political recognition now of the strategic value of standards. So not just as technical tools, but as enablers of policy goals, and also to uphold the values that underpin our European society. At SEN and CENELEC precisely, so we have been working more to make standardization more tangible and relevant for researchers and innovators. One very practical example is the visibility of research contribution to standards. So since last year, we have made a bibliography of our European standards publicly available on SEN and CENELEC websites. So this means that now you can clearly see which scientific publication have directly influenced European standards. And for a researcher, it's quite powerful. So because you have your work cited in a standard, so it's a clear proof of impact. You can highlight in your career or in funding application. In parallel, what we've done so for several years now, so to strengthen this connection between researchers and innovators, is the Standard Innovation Awards that celebrates successful collaboration. So between a researcher and a standardizer, we have 5 categories, from young professionals to research projects. And we do offer our research help desk, so to provide guidance So for those who want to get involved in a research project or in standardization in technical committee, to establish liaison, to make sure that there is a connection and to help also navigate our standardization system. So this is a service we offer to the external stakeholders. So I think together these steps make standardization a bit more visible, more accessible. There are still a lot to do, but this should become, of course, a more natural part of the European and innovation ecosystem. We are working on it.
Together, we're working on it together. Knut, I hope the mic is working. Yes, it looks
Yeah,
good.
now the mic is here. Sorry, it disappeared
You
from my
perfect.
screen.
Thank you for being here, Knut, and for retrying and not skipping us. So I have a question for you when it comes also to standardization. So yeah, you've been you are the coordinator of EDU for standards, and from your perspective, what are the most effective way to strengthen training and awareness on standardization within the academia?
Yeah, thanks for this question. I think there are two aspects. One aspect which we have successfully established is the close collaboration with the National Standards Institute here in Germany, DIN, and we are sitting in Berlin, and their headquarters just 500 meters away. This is kind of a fortunate framework condition which we use from the very beginning since I'm here. That means almost now 20 years to involve them in our training activities, which brings in really the real world of standardization into the universities and to the students. And here also the students had the chance to attend really meetings of technical standardization committees. That means they really experience what's going on, and also industry experts have been involved. That means and other stakeholders involved in standardization. That's another, I think, important kind of success factor, just to show how really the practitioner are involved and how really relevant the topic is for practice. And last week we also had the award ceremony, because the students are not getting only the ECTS, they also get a certificate from DIN that they successfully passed the course. And this is also a very important kind of incentive for students to join and to come to the courses. And then last week we also had somebody from industry, from Siemens Energy, who really explained to the student the relevance of standardization for their company. And that was, I think, a very, very convincing effort, and again showed that this is relevant. That's the one side. The other kind of success is standardization should be not really treated as a separate knowledge valorization or technology transfer channel. It has to be seen in context. On the one hand, in the context to other channels like intellectual property rights, and here in the mobile and IT world, the so-called standard essential patents are important link. Another link which has been not mentioned before is the link to open source, which is maybe more like the digital complementary to standardization. And here also this attracts students which are maybe more into the IT information systems kind of courses and programs. That's important. And on the other hand, what we also really used with success is ISO started in 2016 to attribute their standardization work to the Sustainable Development Goals. That means sustainability as an additional impact factor is important, and therefore we also renamed our English course in standardization and sustainability, and we try to link every lecture to one specific SDG. be it innovation, which is kind of also our main topic here. Therefore, I use innovation every day, by the way, but also other topics, bioeconomy, climate change, etc., etc. And this attracts also students which are keen to really focus their studies also on sustainability. And we also have seen that sustainability it's important on the one hand, especially regarding climate change, to tackle this big kind of challenge or even crisis. On the other hand, it's very visible, and we have seen that several study programs have really integrated that. For example, we have a master course it was initially called Innovation Management and Entrepreneurship, and then 10 years ago we also called it Innovation Management, Entrepreneurship and Sustainability, and therefore we got more than 1,000 applicants for 100 spaces. Therefore, it attracts people, and therefore it also makes sense to link standardization to these more overarching and more kind of well-known topics and more attractive topics in lecture series and university programs.
Thanks, Knut. So on the one hand, you say, working within has been a game changer. And then you also say that sustainability as a new link. And also this is somehow leads back to what Eugene has been saying, thinking to the very end or starting at the very end already, what value is aimed for? What's the strategic value of it, by showing then practical examples. Thank you. We now have, if I'm not mistaken, 3 more slides with general questions to all panelists. And before we decided that each of you would answer, but I think we are running out of time. So we have 5 minutes left, if I'm not mistaken. Nick, please correct me if I'm wrong. And I saw that we also have about 17 questions already in the chat. So let's perhaps start with the first one, and then we take it from there and see where we go. And we could say one of you or 2 of you are taking one question, then we continue to the next. Is that okay? Yeah, okay, perfect. So yeah, from your perspective, what makes training and valorization and standardization effective? Here we already had Knut's approach, let's say, or ideal vision. And in the end, we now want to focus more on the how to implement it concretely. So that's why, is it the format, is it the interactivity, or is it the institutional anchoring, or is there even something I forgot to mention here? Who's volunteering?
Okay, well, it's all of those, but I would say that the participants need to be, first of all, motivated to attend, but also motivated to not leave their course material on the shelf. And that may need some institutional pushing, maybe, to actually put the training into practice at some stage. And you can do it during the training. You can have mock negotiations, for example, and games, so on. But all that interactivity is good, but it's somehow making the follow-up, motivated to follow up and use it.
So expressed before, so that there is a real value in it for the practitioners.
I might build quickly on that. There is a balance to find between making things compulsory and making things sexy and attractive.
Of course, yeah.
And most of the time people tell us, oh, this is boring, or this is too complicated. You should make something funny. And okay, but IP is not funny, not always. And the second thing is we have to demonstrate all the time that what we say, what we explain is really useful for the people, very simply. So again, talking about the audience motivations and explaining really that this is also their interest, not only the institution interest.
Yeah, somehow with some IP initiatives I'm also working with, we're trying to, in most cases, people IP, but we're talking about knowledge valorization here, not
Yes.
in only IP, is that we show then something went wrong, and then they see the loss, and then this is also somehow motivating. But I agree, let's try to make this fun. That's also what Ivana and I try to do with the content we built here. The follow-up question here was, how do you balance broad awareness training with the need for more advanced and role-specific models?
I can take that one. So on our side at Sentinelec, as I explained at the beginning, our focus now is more on building the capacity of existing experts, so on the technical world, so more advanced specific role skills. But of course, we work with our national members who have a much broader reach at home, and there they are doing quite fantastic work on awareness raising and more general training. Last year, for instance, they shared best practices on the young professionals trainings. So our effort is really to build on that and to share these practices across countries. So these are good illustration also how you can attract a young professional and the next generation of standardizers.
And that's a very good example. Yes, we could think about including then the link perhaps in the follow-up. Thank you, Claire. Should we go on or something else? Oh, I did already click, so here we are. Could you share one concrete lesson learned from your own experience that other institutions in Europe could adopt tomorrow?
Happy to say.
It's also, if you don't want to take the question, it's also fine. But yeah, concrete lessons learned from your experience. Christoph?
Yeah, there are many. I don't know exactly about the. It's really very dependent on the level of maturity. So, which is what is always very difficult is you need some analysis about what happened in which context and what is my context. Okay, can I adapt this? And this is a question of maturity, culture, readiness, also from the people. So it's not so easy to answer your question. It really depends on the context.
No, that's true. Knut, you also want to say something?
Yeah, I think one lesson now I have my Fraunhofer hat on is that it's good to build within the organization networks of people who are engaged in the different knowledge valorization channels. That means we have now a standards community of around 1,000 researchers, which is active. Now we have another community building up on open source, for example. And this is a kind of platform where people, especially in institutions which are bigger, and we have 70 institutes, that means can connect and also can exchange their experience, because there's always more in an institution than it's known from the outside, or maybe also known from the top-down perspective. Yeah, that's also my experience.
No, I agree. Well, we also see many communities of practice at the moment coming up, but I also see a huge advantage here in building on exchange among people that are doing more or less of playing on the same field, let's say. Now the last question, and I hope we may take it, or if you don't want to answer it, it's also fine. But we just wanted to, come back to Iam4Re itself with the mission the project has of providing, not only content, but also taking a closer look at these two worlds, standardization and knowledge valorization or IP management in the framework of knowledge valorization. So what do you see as the most important factor for projects like Iam4Re to successfully support institutions in embedding intellectual asset management and standardization. And if you want, this question is also going on to everyone else here, perhaps also Anna, but just feel free if anyone wants to answer.
Well, I can jump in. Of course, I mean, support to institutions, that means probably providing some materials, tools. Okay, this is that can be guides, whatever. I think that would be useful also to provide some suggestions for well, a frame maybe for a political. Our institutions decide at the end of the day. They always ask for some benchmark analysis, SWOT, whatever. And so if we could provide a frame for that, maybe if the people use the same frame, then it's easier to decide and to launch actions.
Thank you. Yeah, well, that's exactly how Iam4Re is built. So the first activities were really, you know, doing an analysis, collecting feedback. But that's what Hannah just presented before. And then also the development of training tools and content is building exactly on this feedback. And for example, also on the feedback that we are collecting then today. Yeah, so thank you all very much. It is 1 o'clock. So Nick, back to you. And thanks a lot for following us.
Thank you, Claire. Thanks to all the panelists as well. Nice to see you all. So really interesting points there that have come out, and you know, the point of really thinking about standardization in particular in a different way and as part of a broader strategy is very important. I'd like just to hand back to Andrea, who's going to give some closing remarks. Andrea, are you there?
Yes. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
I'm still here. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for staying with us up until lunchtime. A lot of things have been said, so I will not keep you repeating what has been said by the panelists, by the other colleagues. I just would like to stress something that has not been said enough. And I have to say I was a bit surprised because it's part of the Iam4Re projects. We talk about knowledge valorization. We talk about standardization. We learned a lot, but we did not mention enough the E that stands for entrepreneurship, or entrepreneurial, or the whatever is based on being proactive and taking actions in order to make sure that intangible assets are used. I would like to raise awareness among everybody about the fact that innovation walks on the legs. I'm using the word of innovation, and Laura will forgive me, walks on the legs of people. And if people doesn't want to move, innovation doesn't go anywhere. So for me, it's not just an issue of having incentives, but it's an issue of being aware of the added value we can bring to society, being aware of how we can contribute in a very extremely positive way if we take an action. Billions of things have been said on how we could better work. We could do things better, breaking silos, widening horizons, considering assets instead of just intellectual property, the importance of raising awareness on the strategic dimension of knowledge valorization at institutional level. Many things have been said about the importance of sharing, building peer-to-peer interaction, learning by doing, being involved. All these things you can find in Iam4Re and in the activities we will bring to you. But what we cannot do is mobilize our entrepreneurial drive. Things are not going to happen our future is going to be as bright as it is today, not brighter, if we don't raise awareness at every level within the knowledge community about the fact that knowledge valorization is not an administrative task, is not something that just at us a quotation, a citation, but it is something that makes us contribute towards a better future, that makes us actors, that makes us active contributors. It's not an issue of metrics, because there is nothing you can measure if it doesn't exist, but it is part of our daily job to make sure that we can bring in and use our knowledge, our intellectual assets, to make things nicer and better. So let's keep in mind that if there is no use, there is not going to be no impact. That's all on my side.
Thank you very much, Andrea. That was a really good ending. And of course, entrepreneurship is key. And I think, you know, what Iam4Re brings is a new approach to knowledge valorization and perhaps a new push for the different stakeholders that we look to engage with. And that's a great image to finish the webinar with. So once again, I'd like to thank all of our speakers, presenters, and panelists for what was a really interesting webinar. And thank you to all the participants who provided questions. I hope we've answered them all, and for staying on past 1 o'clock. So once again, thank you everyone, and we'll see you at the next webinar, which will come in the next few months. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye, thank you, ciao, ciao.